Hello, Gene Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. Today, as I promised yesterday, I want to expand a bit on the subject I was discussing yesterday. The broad subject is this rapprochement that I'm seeing, this thawing between Israel on the one hand and on the other hand, the surrounding Arab countries, the Emirates and especially Saudi Arabia. Now, the specific subject of yesterday's vlog, focusing in a little bit, was 6 Arab journalists from the aforementioned countries who were invited and did visit Israel to tour Israel, meet Israelis, including some Israeli leaders, to build relations, this rapprochement, this thawing that I'm talking about. Now, I want to go a little farther because yesterday the main subject or the main focus was, it was the visit, the fact that the visit happened, and as I just said, the visit as a sign of improving relations between Israelis and Jews and the Arab countries. I mentioned in passing yesterday, or only briefly, that the Palestinians are very disturbed about this thawing. They don't want to see it happen. So that's what I want to talk about, because I think the Palestinians are really hurting themselves. I think also, more important than that, is I think these Arab countries are, as evidenced by this thawing of relations, are planning to throw the Palestinians under the bus. So if they're looking for peace, if they're looking for what they're really looking for, which is to destroy Israel, that's never going to happen. And the world should tell them that. They need to come to realize that. But for now, what they're trying to do is just prevent any kind of a peace deal, to sabotage the Trump deal of the century, as it's called. Well, we just saw recently the meeting in Bahrain where these same countries and other countries met to talk about the first part of this 2-part plan, which is to invest, donate, however you want to term it, $50 billion to develop the Palestinian Authority areas, Gaza and Judea and Samaria. And of course, one necessary element of that is a reconciliation between the Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria and Hamas in Gaza, but that's another video. Staying focused on the subject for today, the Palestinians said that anybody who attends that conference designed to help the Palestinians with $50 billion of investment is a traitor. That's what they said. So I want to expand on that today because, now it's headline time again and quote time. So I'm going to read some headlines and read some quotes, because what is really, it's not astounding if you understand what the Palestinians are all about, which is their rejectionism. It's not about borders. It's about not accepting a Jewish state within any borders. They just want to eliminate Israel. There have been talks in the past, Camp David for instance, where they have come right up to the edge of some kind of an agreement where they have gotten just about everything they want, more than they, in my opinion, reasonably should expect. But as part of that agreement has to be a final agreement. It settles all issues between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and more important, it sets a permanent border that secures Israel forever as a Jewish state. That's what the Palestinians won't agree to, will never agree to. They talk about it in Judea and Samaria. The Palestinian Authority, Hamas, flat out says their goal is and will always remain to destroy Israel. So there is no prospect for peace. So just to prove that further, because the international community, which means in my mind Europe, doesn't want to recognize this, and some Americans too, but the Trump administration, to their credit, and the people that Trump has selected for his cabinet and to handle this issue of the Palestinians, they do get it. They and the Arabs, I think, are sick of the Palestinians. They are just going to throw them under the bus. So the Palestinians are going to miss the train. The train is going to leave the station without them, and they're going to be left alone to just muddle on the way they are forever, or until they recognize a Jewish state and sit down and talk to the Israelis, because that's the only way they're going to have an agreement. As I've said in the past, the most they can ever get, or ever hope to get, is what they can get by sitting down and speaking directly with the Israelis, and if they won't talk to them, then they get nothing, and that's how it seems to be turning out. So I just want to further evidence this assertion of mine, I just, as I said, go down through some headlines, recent headlines, and some quotes. So this is, well, the headline of this story, it's Netanyahu to Arab journalists, Israel prevents collapse of the Middle East. Now what the article is about, the main point of the article, is that, well, you can see the instability all over the Middle East. The Sunni Arab countries, the so-called moderate countries, they would be overrun by Iran and Iran's proxies were it not for Israel keeping the peace. They have the only credible army in the area. That's the main point of the article, but there's one paragraph that I just want to pull out here because it has to do with these journalists. Oh, well, let me also, there's this photo up here just so you know who these people are. The person, because he's going to be important as I go on and talk further, the Arab gentleman in the middle, that's Mahmoud Saud. He's a Saudi blogger. And on his right, on the left side of your screen, that's Avi Dichter. He's the head of the Knesset. That's the Israeli legislature, if you didn't know, the Knesset. He's the head of the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. The person on Mahmoud Saud's other side, that's Hassan Kaabia. He's the Israel Foreign Ministry Arabic language spokesman. Though it's interesting, because I read about this person before, this Mahmoud Saud, if I'm thinking of the same person. Well, it says in one of these articles I'm going to get to, he speaks Hebrew. He admires Israel. He's fascinated with Israel, and he speaks Hebrew. That's interesting, because I'm going to talk more about him in a minute. But it's not so much about him, it's the reaction of the Palestinians to him. So here's the quote. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, said that the journalists told him that many in the Arab world, quote, want to have peace with Israel, normalization with Israel, and want to come to Israel. They are not always free to express it, and there is always opposition from those who want to take us back, but they express that desire, unquote, which is what I'm talking about. That the Arabs, or many Arabs, definitely the leadership of these countries, but according to this Saudi blogger and the other journalists to whom Netanyahu spoke, there is a desire across the Middle East to make peace with Israel. In fact, if you go onto Twitter, you can see tweets from, well, whenever there's a war between, say, Israel and Hamas, or Israel and Hezbollah, you see supportive tweets from Arabs across the Middle East. They don't put their names all the time, but what they'll put, because they don't, for obvious reasons, but what they'll do is they'll put their Arab passport on the tweet, a photo of their passports to show that they're genuine, that they're Arabs in these Arab countries that support Israel. So what I was talking before about Bahrain, but now about these journalists. Palestinians call for blacklisting Arab journalists for visiting Israel, merely for visiting Israel. So here we go down the line of quotes. I may jump in, I may wait till the end of the quotes. You'll just have to be in suspense and see. So, the Palestinian Journalist Syndicate, PJS, on Monday condemned a visit to Israel by Arab journalists and called for holding them to account. The Fatah is the political party of the Palestinian Authority. It's Mahmoud Abbas, that's his party, Fatah. So the Fatah-dominated syndicate, that's the news syndicate, denounced the visit as a blow to its anti-normalization position. It called on the Federation of Arab Journalists and other media groups in the Arab world to blacklist, quote-unquote, blacklist Arab journalists who visit Israel and promote normalization, with it. Okay? The PLO's, that's Palestine Liberation Front for those who may not know, the PLO's Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP, accused the Arab journalists visiting Israel of, quote, promoting the Zionist narrative and normalization, unquote. The PFLP called on Arab media groups to blacklist the journalists and reaffirm their opposition to all forms of normalization with Israel. Which brings us back to Mahmoud Saud, the Saudi blogger I was talking about earlier, the one of those 6 journalists who speaks Hebrew. Maybe the others do too, but I don't know. But he speaks Hebrew. He's a great admirer of Israel, not only Israel, but he admires Benjamin Netanyahu, which I may get to in a minute. But what I want to talk about is the Palestinians' reaction to him, merely for visiting Israel and speaking with Israel with a desire to build relations. So once again, go right down the quotes. A Saudi blogger who is in Israel at the invitation of the foreign ministry was attacked and cursed at Monday during a visit to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem's Old City. Video of the incident shows a child spitting on Mohammed Saud as he visited the holy site while others yell at him to leave. In another clip, chairs and other objects are thrown at Saud as he walks through one of the old city's alleys. One man is heard shouting at Saud, quote, go to a synagogue, unquote. Others are heard calling him a, quote, animal and, quote, Zionist trash, unquote. So that's what happens if you're an Arab who wants to be nice to Israel. The blogger, who speaks Hebrew, is an unabashed partisan of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is loaded with messages of support for Israel, Netanyahu, and the Likud party. That's Benjamin Netanyahu's political party, if you didn't know. His username on the microblogging platform is written in Hebrew as well as in Arabic, and his description includes an Israeli flag emoji and the words, quote, only Bibi, exclamation point, unquote, using Netanyahu's nickname. His nickname is Bibi Netanyahu. That's what they call him in Israel. Saud is also reportedly expected to meet Netanyahu on Tuesday. There you go. Somebody who wants to establish relations with Israel, just a blogger who happens to support Israel, and look how the Palestinians treat him merely for wanting to, as I said, normalize relations with Israel. So those deluded European friends of ours and others who think that the Palestinians have even a remote interest in peace with a Jewish state. They're saying on the one hand they want peace, they want to negotiate for a two-state solution, but they want no normal relations with Israel. And by the way, in this Palestinian state that they say they want, no Jews would be allowed to live there. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of, well, they're 25% of the population, about 20% of the population. Arabs are in Israel. What they want is an all-Arab state next to a binational state. That's what they want. As I said, they will not accept a Jewish state. So the question is, why are the Palestinians taking such an extreme position? Why do they oppose any kind of normalized relations between Israel and the Palestinians? Why do they not want them working together, investing together? It doesn't make sense unless, this is my theory, and partly when I talk about this I speak from experience because I was in the West Bank and Gaza, but this was way, way back in 1968, a year after the 67 Six-Day War. So there was peace. You didn't have any intifadas yet. You didn't have the Palestinian Authority. You didn't have Yasser Arafat. You didn't have any of that. And you could already see it. Budding tourist industry. They showed me some kind of agricultural area where the Palestinians were exporting oranges. You could see the beginning of an economy. And that's what the Palestinians don't want, because they saw a rising middle class. One of the reasons that they started promoting these suicide bombings, which is the reason for that security wall between Israel and Judea and Samaria, because they were sending these suicide bombers, and the purpose was to make Israel put up that wall and keep Palestinians from working in Israel. Because if you have a prosperous middle class, they're not going to stand for an intifada. They're going to give up their dream of destroying Israel. They can say, what the heck, and lose my job that pays twice as much, or 3 times, or sometimes 5 times as much as I would earn working for a Palestinian in Judea or Samaria or Gaza. You would have a solid rising Palestinian middle class. That's what you had actually during that 20 years between the '67 war and when the Palestinian Authority took over. You had trade and normal relations between the two sides, and you had a rising middle class. You had economic growth in Judea and Samaria and Gaza. If you let that go on, then you have a middle class that does not want an intifada or anything that's going to threaten their livelihoods. So that's why these suicide bombings began. It was to force Israel. They complain about the wall, but they wanted Israel to construct that wall to prevent the interaction between the two sides. And this gets back to my earlier point, my main point, which is that the Palestinian sole goal, to the exclusion of everything else, is to destroy Israel. Because if you look at it logically, there's no reason why, while they're fighting for a state, and I mean rhetorically, I don't mean sending suicide bombers into Israel, but while they're working diplomatically or however they want to work for a state, there's no reason for Palestinians not to earn a living. The Palestinian leadership and the hotheads, the Islamic Jihad and all these jihadists, they don't want any normalized relations if it's going to threaten their dream, their fantasy actually, of destroying Israel, which is their sole focus, no matter what they say. And that's my rant for today. Thanks for stopping by again. On to a new subject tomorrow. I think I'll be out of the Middle East for a while. We'll talk about domestic politics, I think. But thanks for hanging on. Glad that you could stop by. As usual, thumbs up if you like this video. If you think someone could benefit from the video, someone you know, then, or even someone you don't know, then share the video with anybody you think would benefit from it. If you have comments, there's a comment section below. Agree with me or disagree with me or argue among yourselves. You can also, if you have a Twitter account, you can tweet out my URLs to your followers and urge them to retweet and, of course, to watch the videos. And finally, you can subscribe. Subscribe, and then you can be alerted as soon as I post a new video. That's my understanding anyhow. I never tried it, but I think that's what YouTube does. Or else, why subscribe if you're not going to be alerted to new videos, right? So, thanks for stopping by. Heading out now. See you again soon. Bye.